Welcome to Chapter 5 with details only. Today we're taking the infamous Bermuda Triangle and we're treating it not as some spooky ghost story, but as a cold case, relying purely on factual evidence. For decades, this specific patch of the Atlantic has just completely captured the human imagination. It's inspired these wild tales of alien abductions, rogue energy beams from Atlantis, and even dimensional time warps. But for this explainer, we're going to strip away all that pop culture folklore and just look strictly at the hard data. So to kick off our investigation, we've got to ask the big ultimate question. What is actually responsible for pulling hundreds of vessels into the depths of the ocean? Like, is there a genuinely unexplainable phenomenon at work out there? Or has the world's most famous maritime mystery literally been solved by science all along? Here is our roadmap for the investigation today. We're hitting the legend of the triangle, famous vanishing acts, the statistical truth, nature's real dangers, the human factor, and finally, why the myth survives. All right, let's establish the boundaries of our alleged crime scene. Section 1, the legend of the triangle, establishing the crime scene. The Bermuda Triangle is this massive, kind of vaguely triangular slice of the western North Atlantic. We're talking anywhere from 500,000 to a whopping 1.5 million square miles of ocean, loosely bounded by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. And what's absolutely fascinating right off the bat here is that this area doesn't actually officially exist. You won't find it on any world maps, and the U.S. Board on Geographic Names doesn't even recognize it as a real geographic region. Yet, it's the supposed site of countless mysterious disappearances. There is just this incredible, stark contrast between the sensationalized pop culture myth and the geographic reality. On one side, you've got the Hollywood version, right? Planes sucked into swirling ocean vortexes. But on the other side, the actual map reveals a massive, sun-drenched, and incredibly busy maritime thoroughfare. Moving on to Section 2, famous vanishing acts, the historical victims. Now, to really understand this myth, we have to look at the very real tragedies that sparked it all, accounting for over 50 ships and 20 airplanes that have gone missing here over the past century. One of the most famous cases, the one that truly launched the modern legend, is Flight 19. Back in December 1945, 5 U.S. Navy TBM Avenger bombers carrying 14 men took off from Fort Lauderdale for just a routine training mission. The pilots reportedly became disoriented, and then the entire squadron vanished without a trace. And adding to that tragedy, a rescue plane sent out to look for them, it disappeared too. No wreckage was ever found. And of course, we absolutely can't forget the USS Cyclops. In March 1918, this huge 542-foot Navy cargo ship was hauling 10,000 tons of manganese ore and 306 crew members from Brazil to Baltimore. It vanished somewhere in the triangle without ever sending a single SOS signal. To this day, it remains one of the greatest non-combat losses of life in U.S. naval history. It's devastating. And tragedies exactly like these laid the foundation for the whole idea that the triangle is somehow cursed. Which brings us to Section 3, the statistical truth, the turning point. But here is where things get really interesting, because when we actually look at the hard data surrounding this area, the mystery just starts to evaporate. According to Australian scientist Dr. Carl Kruszelnicki, as well as the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, there is a 0% statistical increase in danger here. That's right, 0. The accident rate is just not statistically higher than in any other comparably busy section of the global ocean. Dr. Kruszelnicki and major agencies like Lloyd's of London have confirmed this for years. And think about it. Lloyd's is a massive maritime insurance market. You can bet that if a patch of ocean was actually swallowing ships via alien technology, they'd absolutely be charging higher insurance premiums to sail through it. But since at least 1975, Lloyd's has maintained that accident rates here are completely ordinary and proportional. When you compare the sheer massive volume of daily air and sea traffic passing near these wealthy American ports to the actual number of accidents, it really just comes down to basic probability. More ships and planes in the water and air naturally means a higher number of recorded accidents, right? The myth treats the volume of crashes as this extraordinary anomaly, while the simple fact is that it's just a remarkably busy travel route. All right, Section 4, Nature's Real Dangers, the Environmental Suspects. Because the truth is, the real culprits in this detective story are environmental. The area is absolutely fraught with severe natural hazards. First off, you have the powerful Gulf Stream, which is this rapid ocean current that can cause sudden, violent changes in weather and literally push vessels miles off course in minutes. Next, you have converging storm systems that lab simulations show could generate massive 100-foot rogue waves, waves totally capable of snapping a ship in two. There are also thousands of shallow coral reefs, and historically this area featured the Agonic Line, a place where true geographic north and magnetic north actually aligned, meaning compasses required no magnetic declination adjustment. If sailors didn't realize this, their navigation could be thrown off completely. Add in the fact that the vast majority of Atlantic hurricanes pass straight through this exact region, right alongside unpredictable waterspouts, sudden microbursts, and rapidly forming squalls, and you have incredibly challenging navigational conditions. Even for highly experienced crews, these waters are absolutely no joke. Then there's this totally fascinating scientific theory pointing to what are called mud volcanoes. So the seabed here contains these large deposits of methane hydrates. The theory goes that if this gas erupts, it releases huge bubbles that rise to the surface, completely destroying the water's buoyancy. A ship caught in this frothy, gas-filled water would instantly lose its ability to float and would sink like a stone, with zero time for a distress call. It's a brilliant scientific explanation, though, to be fair, we should note the U.S. Geological Survey states there haven't actually been any major methane releases here in about 15,000 years. Let's pivot to Section 5, the human factor, deadly mistakes. Throughout this explainer, we have to acknowledge the most common, yet somehow overlooked, suspect, human error. Especially back in the days before modern GPS and instant satellite weather tracking, navigating the triangle was highly perilous. A minor pilot miscalculation, failing to read a compass correctly, or a sudden engine failure compounded by a pop-up storm meant pretty much certain disaster. Back then, rescue teams were slower and communications were super limited. When you combine inexperienced navigators with those volatile environmental conditions we just talked about, the result is tragedy, not sorcery. And the ultimate proof of this is right now, in the present day. Today, massive modern cargo ships and commercial passenger flights safely traverse this exact space every single day. Why? Well, because our technology, our satellite weather forecasting, and our communication systems have finally caught up to the environmental challenges. It's funny how the quote-unquote curse mysteriously vanished right around the time GPS was invented, isn't it? So if science, the Coast Guard, and insurance companies literally solved this decades ago, why are we still talking about it? That brings us to Section 6, why the myth survives, the psychology of the triangle. Honestly, it's all about media and storytelling. The term Bermuda Triangle didn't even exist until a writer named Vincent Gaddis coined it in a 1964 magazine article. Then, in 1974, Charles Berlitz published a blockbuster best-selling book that blamed all the disappearances on Atlantis and aliens, and it sold 20 million copies. The myth just gained explosive momentum through sensationalist fiction and anecdotal storytelling, like pilot Bruce Gernon's totally unverified claim of flying through a time tunnel cloud. By the time Larry Cush published a rigorously researched book debunking the myths just 1 year later in 1975, it was just too late. The alien stories simply outsold the boring scientific truth. Ultimately, the mystery thrives where facts are overlooked. We humans, we're just naturally drawn to the unknown, right? The pop culture frenzy capitalized on our deep-seated fascination with the unexplained. Reporters were quick to attribute any wreck in the area to supernatural forces, purely because it sold magazines and movie tickets. A story about an alien abduction is just way more captivating than a story about a broken compass and a bad storm. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought for today's explainer. Why are we so desperate to invent alien abductions and time warps to explain these tragedies, when the immense, unpredictable power of our own planet's oceans is already profoundly awe-inspiring? I mean, the real lesson of the Bermuda Triangle isn't that monsters exist in the deep, it's that nature itself commands our absolute respect. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope this clears the fog on one of history's most persistent myths.